Hey, welcome to our first session of our 40-day or 6-week focus, The Blessing of Church. And today, to kick us off, we're going to talk about the benefit and the need of meeting face to face. John, when he writes his second and even his third letter, actually, he mentions that he wants to meet face to face with either it might be a family he's writing to or a whole church. Commentators are kind of divided on that. But he feels something is missing from being physically away from these people, and he wants to be with them face to face. 2 John 12 is the specific verse where he mentions that. So it's not that other forms of communication didn't exist. Of course, he's writing a letter, so there are other ways to interact with people at that time, even if you are far away. But even though that was present, he was doing that. There's value in writing letters. That's a lot of our New Testament, right? Is writing letters from one person to another person who are not face to face. So we're not saying there's no value if you are physically away from each other, but there's something missing if you are never face to face. So I'll kick it off to these guys. What is it that's missing if we're not face to face? What do we lose if we're not in person with each other?
Well, I think of Hebrews 10, 24 and 25 right off the top of the bat here, where the writer of Hebrews says, "Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting meeting together as some of you are in the habit of doing." So obviously it's something very important. John, the writer of Hebrews, are in agreement there that it is important to meet together. But specifically in Hebrews, he's saying, in order to stir up one another to love and to good works. So once again, you could write a letter to someone to encourage them or to show your love or to encourage them to love others. But there's just something about being together, living in community, and meeting together that demonstrate that stirring up of love and good works and being together.
Yeah, some other things that might be missing when we don't meet in person together come from communication research that I've studied. So it's really
Thank you,
interesting.
communications professor.
Yeah, no problem. But a lot of research says that almost 65 to 70% of our communication is nonverbal. So when we're not physically in a room together, we might be missing out on things like touch or even paralinguistic aspects of our communication, like our tone of voice if we're writing a letter, or if we're on Zoom and we're muted and people can't see us very well. There are all these different areas of communication that we're missing out on. So it's important that we spend time together and are face-to-face so we can get those aspects and interpret things correctly. However, though, even when we're together, we might misinterpret some communication. So it's important to think about the fact that when we're not together, we will almost always misinterpret what someone is saying. So thinking about the fact that we do need to be together and we should stir one another up to love and good works, I'm curious, is it wrong not to gather together? What do you think?
It can be, I would say. It depends. So first, like you were saying, if we're not meeting together for whatever reason, there's something that we're missing. There's something that's incomplete. It, before it, whether it's right or wrong or not. Even if there's a good reason not to meet, you're still going to be missing some aspect of being together. But there can be reasons that it would be wrong. Not since we're talking specifically about church. There can be reasons that it would be wrong to drop church, right? If you think I can get just as much from church as I can from being on my fishing boat or out on the golf course or having brunch with my friends. And that's not just like one Sunday. This has become a pattern in your life. And you're like, I'm going to replace church with brunch because I can get just as much out of that. That's not what God wants for you. God has a plan for the gathered church. And so there can be reasons that if you're prioritizing consistently something else above church, that's inappropriate. But there's other reasons. Maybe you're in a pandemic, right? meet, or you can't drive, or you have a physical ailment that prevents you from being in church. And it's not wrong not to be in church then. But I think what we all found out during the pandemic is like you're still missing something, even if it's not wrong. And so for for folks who can't come to church, I think that the church needs to be very active in how do we get to them? How do we kind of make up for this difference of what's missing and what's lacking?
Yeah, I think that's great. The call really is on the church uh, to jump into action for those. And as you're saying, it seems there's a difference between those who can't go to church and those who won't go to church.
Mm.
And for me, as I think about this topic, there's a big difference there. But I think about some of the loved ones in my life, a lot of people who I know. What about the people with social anxiety who just really struggle to be out in large crowds or with large groups?
Yeah, I've actually gotten to talk to some of my friends and close people in my life who actually struggle with this. And I asked them, how do you push through that and attend church? Because it is so important and it's a command that we meet together. And some of them shared that one of the things they think about is the fact that church is not just about other people, even though that is a large part of what we do together is gathering in community and being together for fellowship, but it's also about our relationship with God, our individual connection with Him. So I think maybe framing it as that may make it a little bit easier to attend these big gatherings. And in addition to that, I think God also just commands us to do that. He requires that we meet together. So if we think about that, we do have to engage in social interaction. And maybe it might be easier for some people to think of it as an act of service or self denial. And also thinking about the fact that when you're interacting with another person, you're serving them, and it might actually mean more to them than it does to you that you're there that day and talking to them.
Yeah, that's all wonderful from the like individual side, the individual with social anxiety. I'm thinking about from the church side, how can the church respond to folks with social anxiety? How can the church make church less scary? And we need to, because I'm thinking about people who feel isolated, maybe because they have social anxiety. They will still, even if people are scary, they will still, because it's just in us. We are wired to connect with people and feel part of something, and so they will search out something to feel like they are a part of. They will search out somewhere that makes them feel accepted. And if the church has kind of dropped the ball on making it possible for them to feel connected to church, then they might seek out other places to feel accepted, which would be perhaps less healthy. And so I feel a burden for the church to make church accessible for folks who are have some kind of anxiety for being around people, which is a big focus here. Community and welcoming, integrating together. Well, hey, we hope we've given you lots to think about and to talk about, the benefits of being face to face with one another in person for church. And we hope you'll stick with us for the next 5 sessions, and that you'll have many face to face interactions and discussions over our time together.